Well, hi everyone. So here we are, the last session of the day, and I am absolutely elated to introduce you to some of our employer and community partners. So joining us this afternoon, and they're somehow magically sitting in the right order, we have Drew Peterson, who is the Director of Human Resources from KW Habilitation. We have Mel Blewett, who's the coordinator of desk services, operations, and development at Housing Residences here at the university. We have Cheryl Petrosevic, manager, outbound marketing and community development from Escript. And we have Kimberly Hogendorn, who is the director of global recruitment from SODI. So thank you very much. Please join me in welcoming our employer and community partners. So as with the student panel, if you happened to be in the audience, we will be taking questions. If you've got them, put your hands up. But also, if you don't want to voice your question or you want to submit it anonymously, in the app, if you go into this session, there's a little section at the bottom called Live Q&A. So you can put your questions in there, and then we'll be checking in with our colleagues who are paying attention to that to see if there are any questions for our employers. But let's start things off with a simple one. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your organization, and the types of students you work with, and in what capacity? Do you want to start us off, Kim?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Kim, Global Director of Recruitment at SODI. SODI is a software company. We are headquartered in Mississauga with an office here in Waterloo, as well as offices around the world, and our software is mobile device and IoT device management. So it's a mouthful, but essentially we manage all types of devices for our enterprise customers around the world. And I actually joined SODI 16 months ago in a net new role to build up a global campus recruiting program with a focus on co-op, interns, and new grad hiring. So we are mainly focused on hiring students from computer sciences, computer and software engineering, but magically in the 16 months have started hiring interns of all kinds, including paralegal and HR, marketing. So I really love working with students and really excited to be here.
Wow. Hi. So Cheryl Petrosevic, and I work for Escript. Escript's an embedded software development firm. We develop software for the automotive market. So think about your car driving towards autonomous driving. We provide the security layer that will allow you to drive safely and securely and embed your privacy with it as well. Within our team, we are a team of about 40 people. We are a global company, though, with our headquarters in Germany. And we are the security division of Bosch, which is the world's largest privately held company. So that's kind of cool. That's a cool little fact. We hire students primarily from math, computer sciences, especially if they have any kind of interest or talent in security and security layer applications. And we only hire co-op students at this point in time.
I'm Mel Blewett. I work for the housing department here on campus. We are the department that houses about 6,000 of our students in residence buildings. And as a department, we employ about 300 student staff part-time annually. And then my unit specifically handles residence services. So our student staff are primarily customer service specialists, but they handle a lot of different situations, including keys and security, mail-in packages, and providing resources to our students. And they do a lot of different types of work. So we hire students from every background and every faculty, and I specifically in my unit work with about 100 different student staff each year.
Hi there, my name is Drew Peterson, and I work with KW Habilitation here in Kitchener, Waterloo region. KW Habilitation is a developmental services organization that provides support and services to adults and children with disabilities. Our focus is on building an inclusive community, largely focused here on the Kitchener-Waterloo region. We also have a early learning department which provides ECEs and resource consultants to the school systems here in the Kitchener-Waterloo region. We have about 550 employees. In the summer, Once we start hiring students, we might breach 600. And so students are a big part of what we do. We rely on them quite a bit over the summer rush as our full-time employees are going on vacation. And so we work with students in a couple of different capacities. Personally, I interact mainly with students from here at the University of Waterloo that might be interested in pursuing a career in HR, so they work a little bit more directly with me in the HR department. But we also will hire students in co-op programs, whether they're in a rec and leisure program or from colleges a lot of the time as well. If they're in the developmental services worker diploma program, then oftentimes their program will have a co-op. We'll get them involved as well. And then we also hire a lot of students, again, sort of over our Christmas rush and in the summer, not necessarily through the university, just to work with us on a part-time capacity for summer employment. And then what ends up happening, and this was the case in my own career as well, what looked like maybe it was just going to be a summer job turns into a little bit more of a career with us, which is ultimately our goal. So it's worked out kind of well. Thanks.
Great, thanks. And I think you've already alluded to this one, but since you've got the mic, the next question is, at what point in your career did you realize the value of working with students? And what are some of the specific benefits that you've seen from engaging students in your organization?
I saw the question ahead of time because you gave it to us, and this one's a bit personal to me, and I don't know how scalable it will be for the rest of the team here, but you know, I personally received quite a bit of benefit when I was a student in university. One day, and I'm not super old, and newspaper ads for jobs were still kind of obsolete, but there was this newspaper ad, and I ended up showing up at this guy's house thinking I was walking into a psychology clinic, and I knocked on his door with a resume. I felt rather silly, and he was a doctor, and one of the things was that he was looking for somebody who had already completed his education, or their education rather, and that's what he needed to fulfill the requirements for the position. But as we were talking, like, he really just wanted to help me out in my career, seeing that I was at the time pursuing a career in psychology, and he wanted to just get me something to get me going. So I did that with him for the summer, and then the next summer I returned to work with him again in a larger capacity role. And at the time, I didn't fully understand the significance of what I was involved with, and I talked to students about this quite a bit, that I had taken a fairly large pay cut that summer. I could have worked for the township of Barrie shoveling sand, and I didn't want to do that. So I had taken this job with him, and it was rather a hard decision for me because I also needed to pay my bills. Had I not made that decision, and I didn't really realize the impact of that for 10 years later, I wouldn't have the position I have now. I wouldn't have gotten the interview to work in my first job in HR without that experience, and it really set me up for some pretty significant success down the road. And so for me, you know, knowing what that experience did for me, the value to me for students is just to be able to provide that back a little bit. You know, I get good output. It helps maintain my sanity in getting some tasks done that are rather difficult to accomplish. But the real payoff for our organization as well, I think, is investing in that next generation to provide them with just some building blocks so that when they do have that first job interview in HR or whatever career path, they're not walking in with, you know, Township of Barrie shoveling sand experience, or, you know, a lot of people come from the service industry as it's just tough to get that first little crack. So whatever we can do or I can do to help kind of provide that back, it's a big deal, and I'm looking forward to those emails sort of 20 years from now when they say, you know, if you had not taken that shot on me, I might not be here. So it's an investment for that email 20 years from now.
Fantastic, thank you.
I can say similarly, I feel like when I first learned about the value of working with student staff is when I was a student staff. It's definitely how my career started. But I honestly think that the further I get in my career, the longer it's been since I was a student, the longer it's been since I was in school, the more I realize that so much of the value in working with student staff is the perspective that they're able to bring. And obviously in our work here on campus, we work with students. So students are our customer in many ways. They're the people we're trying to support. And if we work with students, but we don't have a good connection to or the ability to relate to those students, then we're not able to do our work effectively. So working with student staff really gives us that perspective, and I think they're able to empathize with the customer and just brainstorm new ideas in a way that a lot of us as full-time staff would just not be able to. So I think that's really the biggest benefit I've seen.
So I am a bit older than you, and so when I was in high school, there was actually a co-op program that we could participate in, and it was like the new thing. Nobody had heard of co-op before. So I participated in that. So I've been doing co-op for a long time. My path is just a little bit maybe different than other people, and in one of my early career, I had a high school co-op student be assigned to work with me. And the piece with her was that she was at risk to drop out of school. She was a high school student who just wasn't resonating with her. And my philosophy, and when you have a student working with you, is that they're working with you. So their job is to get there, to understand what the work is, and to give them strong, meaningful tasks to do so that they are part of your team. And by the end of the 4 months that she was with me, she decided to finish high school. She completed her university. She's been out in the workforce for a number of years, and she continually hires co-op students now whenever she gets the chance. So I think that that's a really great story of the journey that can happen. I've had a couple of co-op students, one from UW who came to me when I worked at Communitech, and he came in November, and he's like, look, I need a job for January. I'm a business science student. I'm smart, trust me. My grades don't show that, but really, I'm a really great guy. You should trust me. And I'm like, dude, come on in. So he came in January. Lesson for me was, okay, come and start 1st of January. He shows up on the 1st of January and is sat at his desk and read all the paperwork that we had left him, and then texted me a message. He's like, does everybody else come in soon? I was like, okay, so the 2nd of January was really when we needed you to be there. But he's like, I didn't want to be late. So, and this guy has started companies in this community. He has provided jobs for many, many people. He pays it forward and hires co-op students now. The economic benefit to our community from that co-op student is phenomenal. And his story back is I made him call every company that was in town and find out who they were, what they were doing, their numbers, their economic numbers, whatever, and people would yell at him and hang up the phone, and I'd say, call him back. And so he said that experience for him he had no fear. He would call anybody, ask anybody anything, and he learned that from the co-op experience. So, and the other little tiny piece is that I, for a while, ran the Business Education Partnership of Waterloo Region, which is focused on high school students in experiential learning, and then moved from there to run the Ontario-based experiential learning. It was called the Ontario Business Partner Education for the Ministry of Education. So it's something that I live and breathe every day. We hire co-op students all the time. One final story, I know I'm talking long. One final story is our global office had contacted me, our global HR, and said, we love what you guys do with your co-op students when they come into your programs. The feedback we get from the co-op students that work with you from UW is phenomenal. Can you send us the best practices so that we can try to roll this out across the country? So I've sent them all the links from UW, so you have global impact too.
For myself, I started my career in recruiting working for a marketing agency. And when I was in my 3rd year of university, they actually asked me to be a campus ambassador. So recruiting students and peers on campus, and fell in love with doing that, and loved that this organization that was hiring 10, 12, 13, 14,000 students a year in Canada trusted me to be that kind of extension of their recruiting team. So early on, even when I was in school and I was working and getting to be a part of kind of a big company and their recruitment, that really got me excited. Every company I've worked with, we've been very focused on student hires. I've been very lucky to work with people who really see the value, and to the points earlier, it's that different perspective. We all need it, no matter how experienced we are. We can get stuck in our own ways and maybe think something is the right way to go, but having those students coming in and telling us what they're learning or what they're seeing or what they're hearing, that's really helped. So very lucky that I work with people and have continued to work with people who see the value in students, and just love that this is a big part of my day-to-day job.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. And now you all know why we asked these colleagues to come and help share their experiences working with our students. Our next question focuses a little bit on skills. And so what I'd like to know is the types of skills and traits that you're looking for in the students that you hire, and how students might better prepare to enter the workplace with these skills, and of course, the role that we can play in that as well.
So as I mentioned, I work at a software company, so obviously technical skills in the job are key, and a lot of students obviously do a great job both with projects, previous co-op experience, extracurricular projects that they're working on, and kind of learning different coding languages and so on and so forth. But one of the biggest areas that we see with those technical students is how nervous they are from the soft skills perspective. And one of the things that my team has been working on is creating some learning and development sessions for them with communication, time management, presentation skills. But I think for our partners at the universities, it's really just encouraging the students to continuously feel comfortable and confident in speaking up, practicing presentations, taking the lead maybe on a group project to be that person who's presenting in front of their class, because I don't know about everybody else, but our student hires are truly a part of the teams that they're hired for, and their opinions matter. They act as scrum masters at times, so they really do need to have that confidence. So I think that focus on soft skills is the biggest thing, at least from a tech organization, that we're looking to see help for our students.
So I would agree and echo everything you said. So we also work with a tech company, and if they need to have the technical skills to get in the door. But the other things that we really look for is teamwork skills. Are you able to work with each other? Are you able to accept feedback? Are you able to provide feedback? Because they review each other's code every single day that they write, and they have their code reviewed, and it has to be, this is just the job, like this is how we work together, and it isn't attacks or anything against each other. So it really has to be, how do you work together? Part of the pieces that we say, do you like solving puzzles? Do you like working with people? Do you like interacting with people? How do you, give us an example of what you've done at your school or in your personal life that demonstrates these types of skills that they use. What we also do with our students, so is they have to present themselves at the very first full town hall meeting we have. We have one every month. They have to present themselves and tell something interesting about them. The students we have in this time, every single one of them plays a musical instrument. Who knew that? So we're going to have them put a band together before they leave and put on a little show for us. And at the end of each semester, they do a presentation to our team of what did they learn and what was the most impactful thing they learned and what can we do better as an employer for the next round of students that come in, because they do. And one of the biggest things that they said is that we treat them like they're real people. We treat them that they have a strong contribution to the team, and we include them in the next term's interviews. So they get to see what it's like to be the employer interviewing the student, and their feedback is, oh my God, they're so nervous. And then they're thinking, yeah, I think I was nervous too. So practical skills for them as well is really great. And they're phenomenal in their abilities to adapt. So I think that's great.
I agree. The part where they interview the next cohort of student staff is such a small part of the work that they do with us, and yet everyone gives me the same reaction. I had no idea it was going to feel that way to be on the other side of the table, and I never thought about any of those things when I was interviewing. So I think from my perspective, very different. We're not hiring for technical skills. We're very much hiring for soft skills. Our student staff are frontline customer service representatives, and they work 24 hours a day, so they can be working in the middle of the night. And since they're in residence buildings, which are students' homes, they get a pretty wide variety of concerns that they need to support. So we're hiring at a base level for customer service skills, for empathy, and for students who can engage with students who come to them and make them feel comfortable and supported. But I find that the piece that isn't part of that baseline but does stand out as being the most important is a willingness to continue learning and a flexibility and an adaptability, because we're never going to be able to write into our job description every single incident that might come up. We're never going to be able to train them on every possible eventuality. So students who are friendly and confident obviously make good customer service representatives, but students who aren't able to reprioritize and adapt when things come up are never going to be as successful in the role. So our student staff, if they work with us for 8 months while they're in school part-time, they are maybe only in the role for 12 hours a week. So every time they come in, something significant might have changed since their last shift. And they need to be quickly able to get back up to speed on what's going on. We have a lot of changes. As our campus grows and changes, we have to adapt. So they might, in an 8-month period, have to learn 4 new pieces of software to manage different processes where we liaise with other areas, and they need to be ready to continually do that. So what I find is that most students, if they're successful academically, are really comfortable moving through a series of steps and executing a solution to something when they understand what all the parts look like. And a lot of students get a lot more uncomfortable when you put them in a situation where they don't feel like they were 100% prepared or knew exactly what was going to happen. And so I feel like that's the piece that we're really hiring for, is a willingness to adapt and change and grow and ask questions and learn when you're not totally sure. And that's something that we see a lot of students struggle with, but certainly the ones that work with us the longest, the ones that move into leadership positions, who get promotions, and who later go on to work full-time, whether it's in our department or sometimes another area of campus, those are the students that were really willing to do that and put themselves in uncomfortable situations and figure those changes out.
I think on the administrative sort of side of KW rehabilitation, if I'm directly involved in working with a student, I'm looking for a couple of different things. One would be, I think, some sort of a clear career progression or an idea of what they want to do. It doesn't necessarily have to be in HR. While they're working in the HR department, it's certainly helpful, because it allows me to kind of go that extra mile for investing in their career specific to that. That's my expertise, so I can bring them along to an HRPA event. When we do our check-in meetings, I can chat with them about why we do things the way we do it, not just, okay, here's what I need you to do, but here's best practice around any given topic. And where I've had students where maybe they're involved in psychology and are taking some HR classes, but they don't necessarily want a career in HR, you can kind of see it just gloss over. And I don't blame them. It's not the most exciting. It's not for everyone, right? But where I can sort of pour in to say, here is why we apply that HR strategy to this situation. When they have that career progression in mind, there's just a lot more engagement. On the other hand, I'm also looking for somebody who's able to work really independently, but not too independently. And that's the tough balance, right? I don't necessarily have time to spend a lot of time with them. I try and get some check-ins built in. But if they have questions, I won't necessarily always be around and available for those questions. So I want them to be able to work independently. But sometimes students, and I know I was this way, you don't know what you don't know. And I find that students are very eager to please. They want to go that extra mile. They do have a ton of initiative usually. And that can be good, but at the same time, we want to be careful as to not get them into a situation that they're also not prepared for. So for them to find that balance of working independently, but knowing where to check in is really important. And then on the KW rehabilitation side of things, outside of my direct involvement in HR, we're looking for people that are students that care about people. They're going to work directly with adults and children and helping them become a valuable member of the community, helping build that inclusive community, get them out, build their own social networks. And so it's really important to find a student that has that service orientation. For myself, there are a lot of people that are looking for a summer job, and that's okay. We want you to be able to make money to pay your tuition as well. But we need to find those students that aren't just looking for a summer job, but really care about investing in the lives of the people that they're going to support, and they'll really go that extra mile over the summer or however long they're working with us.
Great, thank you. So our next question is going to focus on future skills. I'd be very interested to hear your responses to this one. So we certainly are spending a lot of time talking about the future of work and the expectation that workplaces are going to shift dramatically and rapidly in the years and decades ahead. So I'm wondering what changes you're seeing within your organizations and if and how those changes might affect how you engage with students.
I think, the biggest difference that I've experienced from when I started my career in HR to now is how important it is to adapt and how quickly change is coming. Part of that's because of technology. So when I started my career in HR, what a database looked like and the functionality. I mean, before you really had to be a software company to build a database that a company like KW Rehabilitation is going to use. But now with the ease of use, I mean, a small team of people in a basement can code a proper functioning learning management system or HRIS. And so there's so many options out there, and I think for students to not just be technically savvy, but to be ready to adapt to that change and also understand, and this is a challenge that I think I've had with not just students, but people that are really new in their career, understanding the change management process, that you can't just, because you could make a change doesn't mean that you should make the change, and helping slow that down a little bit. So I think having a group of new employees or students that are ready to adapt to change quickly, but also understand all of the caveats to how you have to help an organization navigate that change. It's a very wordy answer, but I think that's what I really need.
I think I got a little ahead of myself because I feel like I kind of mentioned this on the last question, but adaptability, again, is so important. And I think as an example, when my student staff started at the beginning of this term, so just a month and a bit ago, we taught them, in detail every component of their roles. It was very clear. We had well-developed training. And then 2 weeks later, the director of our department let me know that all of the other housing groups at other institutions have esports and e-gaming in their community centers, and we need to have it in ours. And so we're bringing a bunch of PCs in, and we're doing it in a month, and your staff are going to have to support that. So I did not hire my student staff to do tech support. It's not part of the skill set that they came into this job with, but they're going to have to learn how to do it, and they're going to have to learn pretty quickly and in an environment that is not necessarily conducive to learning that on the job when they have 200 other priorities. So that willingness to be adaptable and to calmly help navigate that change, I think is so important.
I think the trick for us in our organization is that we need students who can work independently, who are self-driven, who understand what it means to hit a timeline or a deadline, but who also are really good at working together in a team. So the skill set that they need to come in with is that one of that, sure, it's the adaptability, but it's there's a certain maturity level too, I think, that needs to come, that they get through sometimes through group work that they do at school, but it's also times through work that they are driven to do on their own. We do not bring a student into the organization if we don't have a team member who is prepared to be their point person, their mentor through their whole entire co-op experience, so that if they have a question or they're struggling with something, that they have somebody that they can directly go to who may not be the one who's doing their evaluation, because a lot of them just don't want to look stupid either, and which they're not, but it's just a fear that they have. And because we have a more flexible environment so that you can come and go as you please, there's some core hours. It'd be great if you showed up for those. If you've got other things to do, you can work from home. That's an option too. But we really try to encourage people to come in because the collaboration that you can get from being face-to-face is great. And some students come in going, wait a minute, I can work from home and never come in. Well, you can, but you're not going to get the best experience, nor are we able to provide you with the best experience. So it's probably not a great life choice.
Absolutely.
At SODI, we, being a global company as well, we often see our students working on products that a lot of it might be developed out of our headquarters in Mississauga, but then surprise, some of it's being developed maybe out of Ireland or out of one of our India offices as well. So what we're seeing from a kind of future of work is a lot more of a global kind of touch for our students, and really needing to kind of set that up with them in advance, because some of us might be okay with a 6:30 in the morning call or a 10 o'clock at night call, but not everybody will be. So really kind of having to really be upfront about some of that kind of global flexibility that they'll need to have. And similarly, I think we also have core hours, and we also do have a bit of flexibility to work from home, but it's really helping the students kind of realize those work from home days. A lot of productivity needs to continue to happen, and use all of the online tools that we have available to still collaborate with your team members, as opposed to what some of us might do here and there and maybe turn on the TV in the background. So it's really kind of just getting ahead of kind of remote working and flexible working with your partners around the world, and just being prepared for a bit of adaptability and flexibility.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. I know certainly the question of remote work is one that we are asking and dealing with here at the university, and then particularly when you're bringing in the context of a student that's with you for such a short period of time, to find that balance of the student productivity and support, and to make sure that that infrastructure is there for them. It's a really interesting challenge for us. I understand that we have some questions in the Q&A.
Yes, so the first question is, what barriers exist to hiring students participating in alternate forms of work integrated learning beyond co-op?
So I think that would be, well, it could be students in internships or shorter opportunities, part-time opportunities. There's a lot of infrastructure that supports the hiring of students in co-op programs, tax credits and things like that. So what barriers prevent you from bringing other kinds of work integrated learning students into the workplace?
We love hiring co-op and internship students. The longer they want to stay, the better at SODI, but we are absolutely challenged when we meet with students who maybe do want part-time work experience with us. And a big part of that, I think, because we're a technology company, it takes 2 to 3 months to really learn our tech stack and our products. So from a perspective of hiring students to do part-time work, that's kind of our biggest challenge. It's just we don't really have the infrastructure to help get them trained up right now, I think, and we don't have, to be honest, I don't think we have the hiring manager bandwidth either to be able to take on part-timers when they're trying to balance getting co-op and internship students up and running.
I would say the same, that the capacity to hire somebody to come in part-time to develop security-based embedded software code is almost impossible. But saying that, we did have a co-op student that was working with us. He had to go back to school to finish a couple of courses, and so we hired him part-time, but it was really an extension of his co-op experience. He'd already worked with us for 4 months, and then he was finishing his degree and working with us, and then we hired him full-time. So that's a great co-op story journey, but other than that, it's really almost impossible to bring somebody in just on a short term, or even on a job shadowing or anything along that line, because what we produce is secret. So you can't just have somebody come walking in.
So my department, I mentioned, has about 300 part-time student staff each year, and relative to that, we only have about 5 co-op students each year. So we primarily employ part-time students, and it is very challenging, and I think I'd echo a lot of those barriers. Like, it's really challenging to continually recruit and onboard at the pace that you need to when your staff are part-time. The training, it takes so much time. So even just introducing a student to a department, and since our students very much triage everything that comes to them, they need to be aware of every single student service that exists on our campus, and a bunch that don't, and a bunch of services that maybe exist in our community, and that's really challenging. So we do about 16 to 24 hours of group orientation, and then another about 20 to 24 hours per person of on-the-job training, but that's incredibly intensive. And even to get to the point where we could do that, it took so many hours of staff time to develop that training material, and to develop good sessions that were easy to facilitate, and we have to facilitate them every 4 months. So it's definitely very challenging, but I think that with time, you can kind of build in some consistency, and that's the only way that we've been able to do it.
Hello? Yeah, I hope this answers your question. I might run the risk of ranting for a second, and I met with Amanda about a week ago. I gave this same sort of rant, but I think it's a significant barrier for all employers, and it's one that I've experienced quite a bit. For starters, just hiring students and from a non-co-op program, it can be relatively frustrating. At the company I worked for previous to KW Rehabilitation, I was in a very recruitment-focused role. So I was hiring students for all sorts of different positions. And the amount of times that I would get into an interview with a student for a summer-focused position, and then they would ask for the month of August off to travel to Europe was mind-boggling. And I hate to rag on any students that are here in your plans to travel to Europe. That's an important experience too, I suppose. But that happens a lot, and so we sometimes are really ready to give experience in a meaningful job to students, and their availability is just a real challenge. They can't start until a certain point. They have plans to travel, and so that's one significant barrier that I think with the right amount of potential education, it feels frustrating because it doesn't need to be a barrier, and sometimes it really is. For KW Rehabilitation, a significant factor is access to funding. We're a government-funded charity, not-for-profit organization, and so there is many different areas that we can access for funding for those positions, but I think one of the barriers or frustrations is that it's an extremely arduous process. So if you've ever applied for a grant through the Canada Summer Jobs Program, it's going to take you 3 hours. It's really tough. And it might discourage a lot of other employers from going, okay, the effort here versus the frustration is just not there. And then on the student end of things again, where I was talking about finding students, is that sometimes those summer student positions that are outside of a co-op program, they don't pay as much as they could make at another summer job. You will make more likely if you go, or at least I'm from Wasaga Beach, so if you're a bartender from Wasaga Beach, you're going to make a lot of money. That's where I grew up. And so you could go do that. You're going to make a lot of money over that summer. That's fantastic. But finding those students that understand, okay, this isn't necessarily going to pay the most this summer, but the experience is worthwhile. And that's what I try and hammer into all the students that we have come through the co-op program, is that I did that. I took that pay cut that summer, and it hurt a little bit that summer, but it paid back more than tenfold over the course of my career. It's really important that you do that, that you get that experience. So sometimes it's just the labor market, the students willing to do the job for the time when you need the job, and then sometimes for organizations like KW Rehabilitation, it's access to funding to be able to support the position as well.
Great, thank you. Rachel, do you want to ask the next question?
Yeah, so we have 2 more questions now. The first question is a 2-parter. The first part is, what is the major challenge for choosing the most suitable students? And what is the major benefit for hiring a student compared to a regular employee?
I'll start with the benefit for hiring a student over a regular employee. Again, students are really eager to please. And an employee in their first, probation period or in their first couple of years, that might exist too, but not on the level that students are willing to really just try and go that extra mile to impress. So that's great. One of the benefits, again, I talk about paying back to students because of the experience that I had, but it's very selfish, right? It gives me quite a bit of happiness or satisfaction. Maybe one day I'll get a job out of it when somebody hits it big. That's my retirement strategy, is that they are the next BlackBerry person and they remember that I treated them really well. So something like that. There's the benefit in that it does feel good to hire a student and provide them with that experience. And their eagerness to learn. Again, you got to be careful about that. That's where we saw a lot of the health and safety commercials back 10 years ago, because students are willing to do really dangerous things because they don't know better. And you got to hone them in a little bit, so that's a bit of a challenge. And I forgot the first part of your question. I suppose the others probably did too.
So it is, what is the major challenge for choosing the most suitable student?
Yeah, I think it really comes, for me, it comes down to soft skills and personality fit. Because realistically, a lot of the students that I'm involved in hiring, it might be different, like at a tech company where they've been involved in a 4-year program in a co-op, but they don't have the skills per se. They all come in with a fairly flatline base of skills where they don't have it for the most part, and that's okay. So finding that personality fit and finding that balance I was talking about earlier around asking the right amount of questions, having the right amount of initiative, but not willing to go too far where you're going to get into some hot water because you've made the wrong decision without checking in first. So personality fit for me would be the largest challenge, and you don't get a lot of time to assess that in a job interview.
I think in terms of most challenging part of hiring the most suitable student for a role is it's that students, especially when they're earlier in their education and maybe haven't had a lot of co-op work terms under their belt or haven't had a lot of previous job experience, whether they're in co-op or not, is a lot of them are very bad at interviewing. They really lack interview skills. And so you have, in my case, we probably interview 150 to 200 students every 4 months. And I find that it's hard to stand out from the bunch, and it's not because they're all so great, it's because most of their interview skills are pretty poor. And so you really have to read between the lines and ask a lot of probing questions to realize whether or not someone is actually a good fit for the role. And then you kind of have to take some chances with students as well. I think sometimes if someone doesn't have a lot of work experience, they can sell you on the other experiences that they have had, but at some point you have to realize that it's very different than hiring a full-time staff member who has different experiences, and you have to take a little bit of a risk if you think someone is willing to try. So I think that can be really challenging. And then in terms of why hire a student instead of a full-time staff member, similarly, I feel like I need to pay it forward a little bit. I think I have had so much personal and professional development in my life because of the experiences that I was allowed to have as a student. And I was given the opportunity to take on a level of responsibility that I think a lot of people didn't get the opportunity to take on. And that has really gotten me every job I've had since and has helped me a lot personally. So I want to pay that back. I want to give students that opportunity. And I like to think that we're employing and training and helping to develop a group of students who, when they do go out into the workforce, regardless of what field or what career they pursue, that they'll be better teammates and better employees for it. So I'm hoping that that's what we're doing.
Yeah, so our biggest challenge is the tech skills. If the students don't have the ability to write the code, understand the business, you can't hire them. So that's kind of the door entry. The flip side of that is the students we get from UW are phenomenal, and they are well prepared with the technology components and are able to contribute. The biggest benefit to us is that we have this fresh mind come in every 4 months who will question, well, why are we doing it this way? We just learned in class to do it this way. Why do you do your code this way? And it helps our people who have maybe been in the workforce for a number of years to be able to reevaluate, is there a better way to do this? Is there a new way to crack this nut? And if there is, let's do it. And so the students really provide that new lens into something. And the other part that we try to do is we try to bring in students that are in different years. And as we all know, as you mature, theoretically you become a better employee, but who knows? But we have students that are, hey, I just went through that course, or I went through that class. Here's how you can manage it and help. So students are helping students navigate their career. And we have, we've got some PhD folks in our office who are saying, here's how I made my career choices based with my education as well. So we're trying to do a continuum of learn, share, grow, learn, rinse, repeat. And that's what the co-op students really do bring to our organization.
Great. Very similar, I think, to Cheryl being also at a tech company. I think from a challenge perspective, outside of potentially knowing some deeper programming languages, for me, it's really actually been over, 16 months ago, I'm at an organization who had 2 students ever. And so for us, it's really been about training up our hiring managers and setting expectations of students' skill sets and experiences and what they are bringing to the table. And part of what they're bringing to the table is being able to reverse mentor some of our hiring managers from that perspective piece. And, selfishly as well, I mean, we're a growing organization. We've doubled in size, if not almost tripled in size in 5 years. So it's also helping us have talent in our jobs, helping us do the work that we want to do, and giving great learning experiences to the students as well.
Fantastic. Is there another question, Rachel? Oh, 2 more. Okay. Wow.
So this question says, do you experience any challenges with hiring co-op students, for example, on the job performance? Is there anything the university can do to better prepare the students?
So we hire students from co-op and internship programs, but we also have hired students who are just looking for their own experience. And it's the students not in co-op or internship programs where we've really had to spend more time from a professionalism perspective and how to work within teams and attitude. I mean, we have an office that's got a basketball court and a gym and games room and all of those bells and whistles that tech companies have. And we've had to have conversations with the non-co-op student hires about how long lunch breaks should be, or you just took a half an hour lunch and now you've been in the gym for 2 hours and you do have work to do as well. So we definitely see that our students who are actually in co-op and internship programs have a lot more training and a lot more understanding of, I think, what it takes to be successful when they are in those jobs. So I haven't seen any issues with our co-op students. It's really been the rest of the students.
Yep, I would say the same. Like sometimes a student will come in and we've got the games and ping pong and all that kind of stuff. And there are times that they're like, we can play like Mario Kart or Duck Game or whatever as long as we want. And we're like, well, technically, I guess, but you still have your job to do. So you have to achieve your job. It's, we kind of equate it to, like eating your vegetables before you get your dessert, that kind of thing. And you know what? They're bright kids. They get it. They get the balance. And our team leads who work with them, that's their job too. So they hold an accountability and a responsibility to help that student understand how to fit in. So if the student is failing in, playing nice with others, it's really our mentor's job to make sure that they understand what it is that they need to do. So we don't try to pin it all on, student, you're here to know everything and be everything, because you're not. We know that you're learning, but we're learning how you work as well. So we're getting and giving at the same time.
I don't employ co-op students in this role. So I hope that from being the university, that in the part-time work our students do it under my team, that they're becoming better employees for their co-op positions. But I will say, I think what I have found is I do employ students who are co-op students. I just don't employ them in co-op jobs. I employ them in part-time jobs that they do while they're on their academic terms. And I've actually had a total opposite experience, probably because of the term in which I employ them, where the students I employ who are non-co-op are generally, I don't want to say better employees, but I have less coaching to do than I do with my students who are co-op students. And I think that's because they know that this job is not a co-op job. So they see it as like not a real job. Like my real jobs are my co-op jobs, but right now I'm on an academic term and this is a different kind of job. So I think having those conversations about, I might be the one who gives you a reference for your next co-op job, so you might want to do well here, is the other side of that. But yeah, I'm hopeful that we as a campus can be continuing to educate our students on what makes them well-rounded employees.
I mean, yeah, there are challenges. Are there any more than with a regular full-time employee that's been there 15, 20 years? They're just different. So even some of the challenges I've experienced is where, I'm aware maybe they don't have the technical competencies to do the job, or maybe they do, but they haven't learned those professional courtesies yet of just, for us, working in an office environment. So teaching somebody how to book a room, and I take that for granted. I assume that they've already done it, and they say, oh, go, just go do that. And then again, whether they're quick to ask a question or they don't want to look silly, so they might not come ask. But sometimes taking those things for granted on my end. I had my student yesterday that I'm working with right now ask me if it was okay if she took 20 minutes for lunch. Now we provide 45 minutes for lunch, so and I hadn't thought to let her know, right? And she hadn't asked. And so there are little challenges like that. There's the everyday performance challenges that you're going to have, some tough conversations, but they're worth it. And again, it doesn't seem any outside of what we normally experience. And there was another part I forgot. But yeah, no, challenges exist, but they're worthwhile.
So I've got my eye on the time, and I think that this question will be our last question. So do you want to share it?
Students often ask what they should expect from the application and interview process, but this differs from company to company. Can you talk about yours?
For a co-op KW rehabilitation, I'd say one difference. They're often not competing. Well, that's not true. I was going to say sometimes they're not competing for against another person, particularly to us. Like we have a volunteer and student co-op coordinator who has a good relationship with the university, and then we'll often kind of filter through. So I'm just meeting somebody that she's already reviewed, and so from that perspective, the interview looks a lot less formal. When I've done more Canada Summer Jobs Grant, more traditional type jobs through a non-co-op, then the process looks very different. For us, I'm very focused on a behavior-based interview that focuses on past experiences. That's a nightmare for students because they just don't have them, and yet they often think they do. And that's okay. I think just preparing for looking at those real-world examples in past jobs that you can bring over to apply to the job interview is important. Don't be afraid to talk about school in a job interview, a group project, but also be realistic about how much I'm going to be impressed by your group essay. You know what I mean? And I hate to sound mean, right? But we're sort of talking about long-term project work, and they don't have that experience, and that's okay. I know they don't have that experience, and sometimes it might be just more beneficial to say, oh, that's something that I really have a lot to learn yet, as opposed to trying to fake it till you make it a little bit, because you can see through it. And so those behavior-based interviews, I'll admit, are rather challenging for students. They just don't have the experience. Don't talk about Shinorama. Personally, I hate to, I know Shinorama is a big deal for the university. I hate to, but again, it's just not the example that's going to help me understand that you're the right person for this summer to be working on, on a team of HR people. The teamwork experience is kind of there, but I need to hear a little bit more. So the more that you can focus on volunteer examples, I mean, volunteering is a really big, important thing. I know I just bashed Shinorama, so that's not super helpful, but oh, did I get shut off? Volunteer outside of work, really important if you haven't had that job experience. But again, take the pay cut to get the job experience so that in your next interview or your next summer's interview, you can talk about the experience you had last summer, maybe even at the same office, and then I'll understand the full breadth of your experience a lot better.
Absolutely. I think I've done a lot of student resume critiques, and I can't tell you how many times I've had to tell a student that as impressive as it is that they were the treasurer of their student council in the 8th grade, it doesn't need to be on that piece of paper anymore. As for what our interview process looks like, for new staff who've never worked with us before, we do a carousel style interview, which most students we interview haven't experienced before and might not experience again. I don't think it's super common, but that means that they're in a smaller group of candidates, usually a group of 5 to 10 other candidates, and their group is led by a group leader who's usually one of our existing staff. And in that group of 5 to 10, plus the leader, they rotate over the course of an hour or 2 hours, depending, between 4 stations. And this is just a way for us to assess as many candidates as possible in a short period of time. But in those stations, we are looking for general attitude. For a lot of students, this is their first job or one of their first jobs, so they don't have a lot of experience to draw on. And instead, we do have one of those 4 stations, where they do a one-on-one interview with one of the management team. But the other 3 stations are primarily assessed and evaluated by other current student staff. And they do get a lot of training to do that, but they're asked questions about their previous experiences on the customer side of things, experiences they had that went well and went poorly, and what we're trying to gauge more than anything is how they interact with the other people in their group. So are they engaging with questions, or are they sitting back and letting other people do all the work? And then on the flip side of that, are they encouraging the people in their group to speak and participate and engaging with those people, or are they steamrolling over everyone around them because they want their answers to be heard? So it's definitely a different interview process than I think a lot of other jobs will use. And as for application, I think what ours is a little different than maybe the tech sector, although I haven't applied to a tech sector job in like 8 years, so things could be different. But I look for a cover letter. If a student doesn't have a lot of experience, I want to see a cover letter because I want to see that they're really making an effort and they care about this job and they took the extra 15 minutes even to just modify a template cover letter that they had for other roles to this job specifically, instead of just firing off the exact same resume to 50 different jobs on campus without actually reading any of the job descriptions. So that means a lot to me, and I know a lot of the other hiring managers I work with as well.
So we try to get as many eyes on a resume as possible. So we do team hiring. Resumes will come in, and we distribute them among the whole entire team because we want to be able to see what is it that you see in this resume as we narrow down the candidates who we're going to interview, what resonates with you, what maybe is part of your history that brought you here that you see in a resume that somebody else on the team might not see. And we distribute that through our tech team because we're hiring primarily tech-driven people. And then we do team interviews. Once we've narrowed down who we're interviewing, a team interview will have at least 2 of our senior developers who will attend it and probably 2 co-op students. So there'll be up to 4 people in the room and go through the interview process with, here's a problem to solve, here's, something, a puzzle kind of idea, and it's really, how do you think? We can't test them on, embedded knowledge because they don't have it. So we really test how do you think through the process. We don't have HR in the room at all because it's really about how are these students going to work with the developers that they're working with. So they need to make that decision. HR has already supported the decisions along the way as we go. And then we invite the students to come into our place and take a tour. If you're interested, you should see where you might work because we have an open office environment. We have lots of comings and goings. Is this the environment of which you think you can be successful? Because this is what we are. And we really want them to understand and make an informed decision as much as we want to make an informed decision about them.
We have a similar interview process. I have 2 campus recruiters here for GTA and surrounding schools, and they meet easily a semester, 2,000 plus students, not counting the applicants that we're collecting with all of the school portals. So my campus recruiters are really connecting and having phone interviews with almost every one of those applicants and those candidates that we're meeting. And then we are shortlisting our candidates. We're showing the resumes to the hiring managers. We're, getting them on board with who we'd like to move forward with. And then it is different technical folks, senior developers, technical architects, who are doing the interviews, and a lot of whiteboarding problems as well, because it's really about how they think. And those are in-person interviews as well, because same thing, most of our students have to be comfortable with Mississauga as the location that they're going to be based in. We only hire a few in Waterloo. So it really is just making sure that they are truly comfortable with our office space as well.
Fantastic. I would like to say a huge thank you to our employer and community reps for coming in today. I know that I still have questions. I'm sure there are more questions in the app, but we have more than exceeded our time. So thank you once again, Drew, Melissa, Cheryl, and Kimberly for joining us today. It's such a pleasure to hear about the ways in which you engage our students, and our students can benefit your organizations as well. So let's give them a round of applause.